it. Get it. Hello, beautiful.
Hello, 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 my friend. I almost let it go longer because
Yeah.
I was in conference mode
Mm,
from our conference last Friday and Saturday, and we like to. I was like,
mm.
oh
They
wait,
gotta be at
we're
the
on the podcast,
conference. Yep, they gotta be in the conference to get the extra dances. Had such a good time with you.
right? So much
Yes.
fun meeting new people. Our speakers knocked it out of the park,
Yeah, they
and
did.
just oof, yum.
Oh, I was sharing in the community earlier on LinkedIn about the biggest takeaway for me was that our breath is also a gift to the trees.
Mm,
During COVID, right? During COVID, I've been really, I don't know if intentional aware. I've been really aware of the fresh air at the trees, right? The
mm-hmm.
fresh air at at the shore when we go to the beach, whether it's New Jersey or Florida, these amazing places we've had the opportunities to travel. But what I wasn't thinking about in those moments was the gift that they give me and then the gift that I give back. So
Mm,
one of the main takeaways.
that reciprocity, yeah.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about the question you asked me about top 10 moments from last year, right? And we both said that Brandy Lee and her saying the podcast helped her. What was it? I always forget if it's to hear or to speak.
To hear again, because
To
she had
hear
gotten
again.
cochlear implants,
Mm,
and, she listened to our podcast on 3 different platforms
yes.
to make sure she was hearing it correctly and
The
seeing
closed
our
captions.
right?
Yes.
And, ugh, that was a
And
powerful moment.
right? And it reminded me of that when we were talking after the conference and the virtual summit about the different places they came from. And we could
Mhm.
talk about Germany and Egypt and California and Virginia, all these places, right? But for me was not the country or the state, but it was the hospital, the
The hospital
recovery bed.
bed, right?
Like the fact that they felt comfortable enough to be there in those moments, but also that it
Mhm.
was that necessary to come get the
Yeah.
information.
That was powerful. That was, powerful to me to have somebody reach out and say, "Hey, thank you for sending the link, but I'm recovering and I wanna join you. Can you send the dial in?" And was active participant, like, just the power of connection, the power of that you don't have to do this by yourself, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really impactful for me too. I
Yeah.
really was grateful. Should we do our official intro and kick this show off?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
Let's do it. Hi, ladies. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self care, intentional business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, Amazon bestselling publicist and author, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade your self and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co founders of Women Connected in Wisdom Community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business and relationships and wellness and talk to expert guests about the intersections of those things and the intersections of a lot of isms.
Yes.
So,
So important. So important.
right?
Sometimes we're on it, sometimes we get thrown off balance, right? How do we maintain all of it?
Right.
Mhm.
Today, we're talking about financial wellness, right? And we're talking about intellectual wellness and
Mhm.
financial wellness
Right.
about sacred money. It's all kind of in there. I was really thinking about, I was thinking about, well, I was thinking about so many things because this week is just like, whew.
Mhm.
Um, did you see the socials about the young mom who was dying of cancer
Mm.
and she was an artist and she put out her song for
No.
royalties for her son to leave
Okay.
her son a legacy. So she
Wow.
recently passed. Yeah.
Mm,
But it made me think about this, about like financial security and financial, because it went viral. Like her
mhm.
song went viral. And I was gonna call her name, and I had it queued up, and then of course I looked at something and it got unqueued. So I may bring
Mhm.
it up later in the show.
Okay.
But I was just, she was really on my mind and on my heart about power of connection,
Mhm.
talking about financial wellness, talking about intellectual wellness, and also just how short life is,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That I am so grateful for our connections, our resources, our guests today.
Mhm.
Yeah, all of that's been swirling in my head the
Yeah.
last couple of days.
And I've been thinking about it a lot, especially since we published volume 2 and me talking about intellectual wellness, right? Building habits that make sense. How do you do it so you don't burn out? And since then, becoming a life and health insurance agent, right?
Mhm,
Helping people get set up because when you know you're sick, it's when it's more difficult to have that conversation.
mhm.
And my mom passing away and not having had those conversations as intentionally as we could have, doing the due diligence that our guest is going to talk about, just adds more to that process. So I'm super happy to hear that this went viral. Hope she's resting in peace, sending her
Yeah,
son love and ease and rest and peace of mind.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and the power of the arts.
Mhm.
It makes me think about Dr. Sheila K. Collins,
Mm,
and she has a new book coming out. She's been a regular guest on our show, and my co-collaborator and co-writer on Still Point, or
yes.
I was hers.
Right.
And her new book is The Art of Grieving and
Mhm.
using the arts. And yeah, all of that has just been swirling around in my head. So,
Yes. Yes. And I love that about Dr. Collins' work, that she teaches us to make art of the difficult things that happen. And her story is one that I listen to and I look at and I'm just lost for words how I would wrap my mind around being in the things that she's survived and thrived through and
mhm,
continues to help women and their families go through. So, it makes me think of how sacred everything is. And that's what we're talking
mhm.
about today, a heart centered approach to sacred finance, right?
Mm.
And again, like we could talk about, and we will today, right, how we feel about finances. But with the podcast, one thing that I've been super excited to do is just be intentional about where I put my money, having it be a source of joy that I get to know that I'm going to this gas station specifically because I need one by my post office box. I need one by my job. I need one by my house. And also, if I'm pouring into somebody in our community, how that can connect everybody and my cash flow feeds their cash flow and it'll come back around.
Well, you saying that, I was just at a business networkers meeting,
Mhm.
and this morning that I was invited to by one of our authors from Volume One,
Yes,
Sharticia,
shout out to
and
Artesia.
she invited me to a networking meeting in my backyard, basically a mile
Mm,
down the road, and Joe Ventrius was there, one of
mm.
our other Volume One
Hey,
authors,
Dr.
and
Joe VZ.
Dr. Joe. So super fun.
Mm,
Used to I would dread networking, right? And
really?
yeah, I mean, when you first start, it's awkward and you
Okay.
gotta have your elevator pitch and all
Okay.
that jazz. But really anymore, I do come from my heart and
Mm,
it's about the connections and it's
mm,
about there was something that you said it was talking about, you know, the stream of money and energy going from people that you connect with, like
yeah.
that you like, that you trust, and that
Mm.
right? And so that was pretty powerful. But should I read our definition for our listeners this week so we can get ready to get this guest up here on stage?
Let's do it. After you read the definition, I'll do the bio because I want the majority of our time to be with our guests.
Let's do it. All right, y'all. Today we are talking about intellectual wellness because we're about to learn some stuff. I'm
Mhm.
excited about that.
Me too.
Intellectual wellness includes having access to different sources of information and developing critical thinking and timely decision making skills.
Mhm.
Also, continual learning through intentional intellectual growth, situations, and artistic creativity can help maintain one's own intellectual capacity.
Mhm. So important, so important. And today our guest is Genevieve Chavez Mitchell. And she is an author, a local activist, a global citizen, a conscious investor, and an
Mm.
artist. Genevieve's background includes business and nonprofit consulting, natural health care, and portfolio management. She and her husband manage their modest investment portfolio by investing in people and businesses that create a healthy, sustainable world. She is a proud mother and grandmother to her 4 sons and her 4 grandchildren. She co authored the book Prayers to the Goddess, a moon cycle devotion with Ann Key. Genevieve loves live music, being in nature, and her big, beautiful family. She's an avid photographer and delights in hot mineral baths, good food, good friends, and good conversation. She is committed to a just, thriving, kind, regenerative earth community. She lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico with her husband, Paul. Help us welcome to the stage Genevieve Chavez Mitchell. Hi,
There she
Genevieve.
is. And she has a new book.
Yes,
I
yes.
do.
So, can we start there? What is your new book? And we can root the conversation in that.
So here is my new book,
Mm,
Mm,
I love it.
Whoops,
Yeah, there we
Sacred
go.
Money, The Power of Heart-Centered Finance.
mm.
So, just a moment of silence because the
Yeah,
cover is
let's just breathe
beautiful.
that in. I love the title and the cover. For our listeners who are listening and not
Mm,
watching,
mhm,
can you hold it up again, Genevieve, so I can describe it to them? So it has, first of all, it has beautiful font that says
mhm,
sacred money. And then it has this heart that is in 4 sections, and it's green, like a yellow, gold, red, and blue. And you see the money behind it, but the heart is what stands out. And then
mhm.
it says the power, and power is highlighted, of heart centered finance. Oh, that's beautiful.
So important. So, can we start there? Let's start with what you mean when you say heart-centered finance.
What I mean by heart-centered finance is that we are essentially spiritual people with
Yes.
hearts that
Mhm,
drive us, that is the core of who we are. And if we can use our thinking, our intellectual wellness, our
mhm,
critical thinking, our learning to bring in that both the spiritual piece as well as the economic piece, then we can focus on intellectual wellness and financial wellness.
so important. And I love how in your book you talk about going from me and mine, right, to we. What is the I guess the position that you see it best that we transfer to? The we, us, and what's the third part of it?
So I like to frame it as
Yes.
a paradigm shift
Mm,
from the societally based framework that we have operated in for for a millennium or
right,
more.
right.
And that is the me, more, mine, money, greed, accumulation, capitalism, patriarchy that
Mm,
has framed the way we have done money in our society. And I'm inviting people in my book to think about a different framework, which would be us, we,
mhm,
the earth,
mm.
community, connection, that interconnectedness that we all know is there. We just don't, we haven't in the recent past been tied into that interconnectedness.
Yes. It reminds me of this show that we've highlighted on the podcast, the Centennial show, The Blue Zones. Have you seen that, Genevieve? Have you heard of it?
I have not. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
So it's this show that highlights centennials who are people who live to be over 100, right?
Oh,
It's really good. And things like exercise, movement, laughter, intentional, healthy lifestyles, right? But one group of women, it was their connectivity to community, right? And in this community, they were really intentional about pooling their money for emergencies. And I've seen
mhm.
that at jobs, but I love that they did that in their friend group.
That sounds awesome. I'd
Mhm.
like to be part of that group.
Right?
Right? Right?
That's what I said.
And just knowing that we don't have to do this alone,
No.
right?
Right.
And when I think about money, especially, I
Mm,
think that and we've had this conversation multiple times on the show, and it often comes up about how it depends on the family you were raised in, right? But a
Mm,
lot of times we were taught not to talk about money. And so sometimes there's shame attached to money, or there's ignorance attached to money, or there, like, it can
mm,
be multiple, or there's trauma attached to money, because we've had a conversation about domestic abuse and how
mhm.
there's financial abuse
Yes,
often attached to money.
yes.
So Genevieve, I know that in your work you help people identify their money stories. What is a money story, and how do you identify it?
Well, think of your background and for example, the first time somebody gave you money or paid you money,
Mhm.
you have a feeling about that, a history about that, and a response to that. All of us do. So that's part of our money story. It's our belief. For example, I had a client who whose father told her that rich people were evil and bad.
Mm,
So she was like, "Oh,
I
I'm
don't
not
want to be one of those.
want to do that." But she struggled financially in a very big way for many years
mm,
until she and I had this conversation. And I actually just had her write out her money story. And what she realized is that for her, her money story was floating down a river. And if she needed something, she just pulled off the river and it was provided. And
mm.
that the divine was always there for her. She didn't have to feel shame or regret or the, or hold on to that belief that money was evil.
I love that. And for me, and we've been talking about volume 3, right? I've been thinking about what I want to write about, and I can say that this is true. I would say that I don't come from a family who's been rich and have all this money that laying around, right? Um, but what's been beautiful is that the one thing that I would say I didn't have, I didn't need in that way. Right. I asked for a resource, I applied for the scholarships and things fell in place. And I do believe that it is God taking care of it, and that's when he can show up and exceed expectations. And that's what's been happening as I go to be that person, because I do believe that things will be set up and my children's stories will be different. So I hear you saying that this is the story that she wrote, right? Do you have people write different stories, or is it, do you frame it in the way of what would you like your money story to be?
Both. I
Okay.
think that you have to acknowledge what was. For
Hmm.
example, I'll just give an example. I grew up in a Mexican American household where women had roles:
Okay.
mom, daughter, sister, auntie,
Mhm.
child caregiver,
Right.
housekeeper.
Yes.
But they weren't those roles didn't include a financial component. I mean,
Mm,
truthfully, I in my extended family, women didn't work. And I found that challenging because I wanted to be a professional.
hmm.
So I had to change my money story from women stayed only at home and did not work unless you
Right.
worked in a service, worked in the cafeteria at the local school. I
Okay.
wanted something different. So I had to change my own money story. But you have to identify what it is that you're living with. And
Right.
like we talked about earlier, maybe there's trauma there, or maybe there's some regret there, or something that you need to acknowledge. Once you've acknowledged that, then letting that go. And it could be through a ritual. I mean, I always love the ritual of burning that story and
Mhm.
then writing a new story. What do you want your new story to look like?
Oh, I like that. So can we talk more about that? We talked a little bit about forgiveness, right? And I may have some work to do around it, around money stories, because I feel like here, the way I've operated in community in my early 20s and my teenage years, right? This is where I realized I was giving my power away. You've been waiting for a resource and you get it. And look at you. There it goes to somebody else before you use it for what you thought you would use it for? So I
Mhm.
think I can do that. Can you speak more to that?
So I think that forgiveness is a fundamental component of who we are. to heal ourselves.
Right.
And if there's a place around money that you feel like you need to heal, then doing a forgiveness protocol
Mm.
is wonderful. And there's various ways to do that. I refer to a couple of things in my book, but Jack Kornfield, who's a Buddhist leader, has a wonderful online forgiveness protocol. Forgiveness in 3 directions. First, you forgive all the people that you have hurt.
Okay.
Then you forgive yourself. And then you forgive people that want to forgive. But it's
Mhm.
not just one direction, it's 3 directions. Other
Mm.
forgiveness protocol is to identify a person and write out every day for a month, a full page of I forgive you, person, and I love and accept you just the way you are. That another technique
Oof.
is to work with emotional freedom technique, the tapping
Mhm.
technique. And
Mm.
Mhm.
that can be enormously helpful. Even though I'm really angry at this person, I choose to love and forgive them and then tap that through.
Mhm.
So,
So I've heard of this, right? The EMT. Can you talk more about it? I've seen the videos and they're tapping where you're tapping. How would you describe it to someone?
oh, emotional freedom technique is amazing. It's called emotional freedom technique. There is lots and lots of material on the internet. There's lots of videos on YouTube.
Mm.
There's wonderful books out there. I was trained back in the 90s. I've been doing it personally for myself and with others
Mm.
since the 90s. It's super easy to learn and super easy to use, and something you don't need anything for except your fingertips and your body.
Mm.
Can I add something in here? Because I love this technique. And, used to it was be considered so woo woo, right? Like
Mm.
people, but I just Googled it because we always grab a resource for our listeners and put it in our show notes. So while
Mhm.
you were talking, I'm Googling it. I find this very fascinating. I think you will too, Genevieve, because we've been doing it a long time. First thing it comes up is through Kaiser Permanente. They're talking about emotional freedom technique.
Oh my God.
Second thing that comes
Mm.
up is Healthline, Purdue University, National Institutes of Health.
Oh my gosh.
That is to me just whoa. Like that's pretty powerful about how science is catching up with things that we know have worked for years,
Mhm.
and it's starting to get legitimized and people are like, "Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay." So we will put some links in our show notes for folks, and there's all kind. You're so many resources.
There are.
It's on WebMD. It's on Everyday Health. Like I'm just shocked because I was have my sources that I was expecting them to show up for, but no.
Mm.
Fascinating,
Yes.
fascinating.
And it's a wonderful technique that
Hmm.
anyone can learn, and it's super easy and super simple.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
when we talk about your book, right, can you give us maybe a snapshot of what led you to the work that you were doing and writing this book? Why put out Sacred Money?
Shannon, the real reason that I wrote this book is because I was looking for it on the bookshelf and I
Mm.
couldn't find it.
Mm. One of the best reasons, right?
So I wrote a book because it I was looking for a book that would connect my soul self, my spiritual
Mhm.
self,
Mm.
my interior life force energy from the universe beloved,
Yes.
that connected who I was as a mindful consumer and an economic person in today's society. I couldn't find it. So I wrote it. Well,
Mm.
I hope I wrote a version. I wrote my version, and I hope it's helpful to people out there.
Genevieve, what I love about it is, when we talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness, we often talk about how they overlap. And,
Mhm.
it's hard to have one without the other. They weave together. we kind of pull the threads apart every week. But like when I think about your book, I think about intellectual wellness from
Mhm.
learning something new. I think about financial wellness. I think about spiritual wellness. I think about emotional and mental. Like you have just woven together this beautiful book that is really rooted in wellness around finances.
Yes.
Well, I'm hoping so because we live in a society where, in fact, when you talk about money and spirit,
Mhm.
it's like the temple's on one side of the road and the bank is on the other,
Mhm.
and you have to cross the road and there's lots of traffic,
Mhm.
you know? Or we think about the tallest building in town. The tallest building used to be the church. Now it's the bank. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, where do we want to go with this? And how can we connect the two? And I think that's the point and purpose, even in my own journey. How can I be the kind of spiritual human operating in today's world and do wise and thoughtful and conscious things with my money?
Yes. I love it. And for me, it also points to my passion behind Women Connected in Wisdom, right? Why do I believe people should be well? Why do I believe we have the right to be healed? Why do I believe we can be connected? And a lot of times, finances is the undercurrent that kind of pulls us away from where we feel like we should be, right? Whether it's literacy, whether it's where we are right now, and you talk about that with rewriting your financial story. And originally, when we started the podcast, I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the eight dimensions of wellness, right? Since then, we've had Claire Brumwell on the show. She talks about universal needs. And I think it points to the same thing. You know, when you can be intentional about it and write your story for yourself and think about your purpose, then when you come from a place of wellness, I think that the possibilities are endless.
Mm. Genevieve, I want to take us a little, it's on the same track, but it's a little sideways.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about this when you were talking about being purposeful and
Hmm.
our money aligning with our values, right? I recently received a small inheritance from my uncle when he passed. And it was in like stocks. It was, and you know, you get those questions. Do you want to cash it out? Do you want to leave it? Do you? And what I was faced with is how do I know when I'm investing that something aligns with my values? And now my uncle was from Deep East Texas. So I'm having this conversation with a financial advisor in Deep Seven. I'm like, I want to review where this is because it may not align with it. You thought I was speaking a completely different language. And so I don't know exactly what my question is. Well, I guess my question is when you're looking at investing, how do you figure out that your money is going to something that aligns with your values? That is my question.
Hmm.
I think that's a great question. And I think it's a question that everyone should ask. And to align what you are investing in with who you are as an individual is huge because that means you're being mindful and conscious and considering the options as opposed to giving that power away to someone else, a financial advisor, a husband, or whoever is handling your money.
Hmm.
So one of the first things is to look at it, see what's in there, and see if that's what you want to do with your money. Now, I can say I am not a financial advisor. I can't tell you where to invest, but you can certainly ask the questions about what's there and is it possible that I could, if it's not aligned with who you want to be, could I move that into an environmentally social governance fund or investment or a socially responsible fund or investment that would work for you? Keep in mind too, this isn't for everyone, but the stock market may not be your best place for investment.
Hmm.
I will tell you, my husband and I don't have but a pittance in the market, because I personally, this is just me, I don't think that the market has my best interest or my community's best interest in mind when it's doing its market thing.
Mm-hmm.
So my money is being invested in my local community because I want to help the farmers. I want to help this restaurant build out their new drive up. I want to help somebody, get back in business if that's what they need to do. And so I consider all the money transactions I do, gifting, philanthropy, investing, supporting others, all of that is an investment in my community.
I love that.
So I'll share with you. We just invested our retirement funds in a local farm. It's 2.5 acres, and they grow food, and they have hoop houses, and they do amazing work. It's 3 local farmers who are working very hard to build this business. But when I go over and visit with them, I come home with cabbages that are this big.
Wow.
And turnip greens and bok choy and carrots and, a basket of tomatoes. I mean, there's a whole lot more to the return on my investment than just a little bit of interest.
Oh, I like that.
Right. As a farmer's daughter from Texas, I just want to say thank you for investing in small farms. Like it is powerful, and it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think about for years I've done the Kiva loans, like where you can pick who you invest with. I think that's a really good tool for people if they're starting small and want to do that.
Can you say more about that, Kiva loans? I've never heard of that before.
It is, well, how would you describe it, Geneva?
Kiva, you can go to kiva.org, and it is a mechanism by which you can invest small amounts, like $25, I think is the minimum.
Okay.
And that can go where you want it. It could be go to a goat farmer in Kenya. It could go to a co-op in Honduras. It could go even there's some loans here in the United States, and those are repaid back. So once you've invested your $100 to this farmer in Kenya, then you get that back, and then you can reinvest it.
Yeah.
But you're not getting any interest. So that's the one thing.
Okay. Yeah, it is definitely like for service. And when it first started, it was not available to folks in the US, and it is now. But like you can put filters in, like women-owned businesses, and that's how I started, is just doing really small loans to women-owned businesses to give people a chance, right? Because sometimes you, depending on your size and your gender and your race, and you may not have had access to funds. And we know that. We talk about this stuff on the podcast all the time. But, so that's, to me, it's just one of my service things I do. It's not for making money, but it's one of my service and feel good things I do.
There are some platforms out there, and I will have to get those names to those platforms, but there are platforms for small investments, meaning in 2012, President Obama signed a law that allowed unaccredited investors to invest in small businesses. And so there's some microloan platforms that are government, there's an oversight component on that.
Right.
And after this, I'm happy to get you that information if people are interested in finding a way to do small, if you're not an accredited investor. And an accredited investor means that that you have more than $200,000 in income, I think, or a minimum of $1 million in savings or something.
Got it.
Remembering, but it means that smaller investors like most of the rest of us can invest in small business.
Right. And I appreciate it because I hadn't known that there was a distinction between accredited investors and unaccredited investors. So, absolutely would love that information to put in our resource library.
Good.
Well, and that was a term that was I went blank on when I was talking about Kiva is the micro loan because
Mm,
that's the platform. It's a micro loan. Yeah.
that makes
We were talking before the show, Genevieve, and I wanted to bring it into our full conversation because one of the things we were talking about was forgiveness. But we talked a little bit about it earlier about like when somebody's done something wrong, but when we've done something wrong, like
Oh,
with finances, when we've lost money, when we've misplaced money, when we've screwed up our checking account and gotten hit with fees, like how do you work with folks that are still struggling with that?
the same way that you would identify a money story. It's that same concept that you have to first be aware that you're even feeling that. And it could be something big, like losing a big chunk of money. I've done that. It's not fun. Or something like, misplacing $100 bill because you were just not thinking. It's like, then you beat yourself up. What is that $100?
right.
So acknowledging that feeling and then doing whatever process that you need to do to let that go and forgive yourself. Do that. I forgive myself. I mean, none of us are perfect.
Yes. Yes. And I think, and again, I now after this conversation, know I have a list of things I need to work through, right? But when I get to that place is okay, your worth is not based on this amount of money, right? The money will flow back. It will come from somewhere else when you don't expect it. And right now, you still have what you need.
Well, the other thing is that we've been told that our value is based on either how much money we have or how much money we make.
Right.
I mean, what a sad state of affairs to think that you or I only have value because of the money that we have. It's like
Mhm.
Right.
we have value because we are divinely made
Right.
and we have this life force inside of us. That's our value. The value that we give to our families and to our neighborhoods and to each other in relationship and to the earth by caring for her. That's value, not what's in our bank account.
No.
I mean, I know lots of people who don't have a whole lot of financial resources.
Mhm.
Man, they are powerful individuals to
Mhm.
be with and to share with and to connect with. And, my mind is just going, oh, I know this person, this person, this.
Right.
Mhm.
And it has nothing at all to do with their financial resources.
Mhm.
Right. And I think for me, that's, as we're talking, such a good place to start. Like, because it's such the water we swim in the culture in the United States, to even just have that awareness and the acknowledgement, and that in some ways we have to separate it and then we have to bring it back together in a healthy, sacred manner. Right.
Mm.
Right. And what's that healthy, sacred manner? It's identifying your values and what you want to create in your world. So I'll
Mhm.
tell you, in my world, I am working to create a just, kind, regenerative, sustainable environment for my kids, for my grandkids, and for the next 7 generations. That's what I want to do with my money. So when I spend $1, I want to spend it locally because that's going to circulate in a very big way rather than now. And I understand sometimes you just got to get it online,
Mhm.
but that's not where the money really, really works. It's when you're spending locally, when you're buying locally, when you're investing locally. I mean, money we spent in the local area provides payroll and area businesses and profits spent by that business owner back out into the community,
Mhm.
local philanthropy, local tourism. All of that matters. And that's where I want to hang out and play.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes.
mm.
So before we go to wisdom and action, I have a question, right? For
Yes, ma'am.
somebody who may be struggling from coming from the me, mine to the us and the we paradigm shift, right? What would you say to that person that might not see the way to make that shift right now?
I would say that for everyone who wants to attend to their money, that you get a good handle on where your money's going and what you have.
Hmm.
You know, there's people who have money squirreled away in three or four different accounts or three or four different jobs that they've had this retirement and that
Right.
package or whatever.
Yes.
Find out what you have, find out what you're spending, and then think about how you would like it to be. But
Hmm.
you can't change it. Again, it's like we can't do something different unless we know what we have. And that certainly has, you know, certainly is the situation with money. We've got to know what we have, what we're spending, what we have to invest, and where our savings are. And unless we have a good handle on that, it's really hard to make different decisions.
Mm. I definitely would second that. I would definitely second that.
You talking about that, Genevieve, and I couldn't pull it up at my fingertips. I'll try to find it to put it in our show notes. But do y'all remember that video that went around a couple of years ago? And it was really about perspective. And it was talking about like if you own a car, if you've graduated from college, if you've
Mhm.
done this or that, and it kind of pulled out to the perspective of
Maybe.
really it was a powerful video, and it just made me think about when you said acknowledge what you have,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So part of my personal philosophy is start with gratitude,
Hmm.
right?
Oh,
And
yes.
just start with gratitude. And I remember years ago, remember when Oprah challenged all of us like to really get every day, right? Gratitudes. I will never forget this because it went missing. And I think my sister took it when she moved, but I don't have proof of that. I got to forgive her. Um, but it was a potato peeler. It
Mm.
was this potato peeler that fit into my hand perfectly, and
Mm.
I had gotten it at an estate sale and probably paid 50 cents or $1 for it. And I can still tell you how it felt, how I felt when I was peeling the potato, because I gave gratitude for that potato peeler for years. Like,
Mm.
I just loved it. But it was from that practice of starting with gratitude,
Mhm.
right? It was
Mhm.
like this was this 50-cent dollar potato peeler that just brought me joy and ease in my life. And anytime I get funky, because I've had these practices for years, but I can still get funky.
Yeah.
Something will happen, or
Yeah.
I got two kids in college, so I can go woe is me pretty quick if I'm not
Mm.
careful.
Mm.
I back up and I start with my gratitudes and
Mm.
just looking around, and the fact that I'm housed is a huge gratitude. The
Yes.
Mhm.
fact that I can walk out and get in a car is a
Yes.
huge gratitude. Um, I just think about that, right? The fact that I don't work, like I have food in my refrigerator and I have food in my pantry, and then I go from there, right?
Yes.
And then the abundance that we live in the United States and the
Mhm.
abundance in the natural world. Like I
Mm.
can walk out and have beauty right where I'm at. Like it is such a gift that I don't want to take for granted.
Yes. And I think I do remember that video, Christine, and it sparked for me remembering my privilege, right? We've talked about it, Genevieve, and we talked about it last week, right? We had a guest who was from India, and she was showing us the different ways that different people connect. She said in the Mediterranean cultures, they connect on what brings them pleasure, right? Where she's from, they connect on just things that they like to do, commonalities. And in America, we ask, well, what do you do? And it's about the value, right? And
Mhm.
especially with us being at the end of Black History Month and being a small business owner, right? I can understand how amazing it is not to have to add labor into your budget. Like labor is not out, this profit margin is different than it is when labor is in there. So of course, coming from a place of free labor and valuing bodies, valuing lives, it makes sense that that's the mindset of where we are. But shifting from that to, oh, as a young Black African American in the United States, I'm still privileged to be able to read, to be able to write. You know, I told you guys I didn't come from a place of um, financial abundance growing up, but working from being from that place now, that actually helped me to get scholarships, you know, to be able to have my college completely paid for, to be an RA on campus and have room and board completely paid for. Those things are privilege. And even if somebody listening isn't in those situations, you know, being in America, still being top percentage of the world, I would rather be here figuring it out than different places without central plumbing or the things that make our life as comfortable as it is. So I appreciate your work and helping us remember that we are sacred, that we can have a sacred relationship with money, and we can tap into our spiritual selves and still have financial abundance. And the two don't have to make you two completely different people.
Right.
Mm,
Yes.
mm.
Yes.
Yeah, well said, Shannon.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So, ladies, we're talking about intellectual wellness. I do not have my hashtag yet, so I will choose to go last. What is something that you're doing to be intentional for yourself this week around intellectual wellness?
What you think, Genevieve?
Oh, what I'm doing for intellectual wellness? Oh, let's
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
share. I'm doing a process called photo reading. I
Tell
don't know if you know anything about photo reading, but it
no.
is a super learning technique. It was developed by a man named Paul Sheely with learning strategies back in the 80s.
Okay.
And a friend of mine teaches this. Her name is Melissa, and she is teaching a course in Atlanta, Georgia next month.
Mm,
And
okay.
I will give you the links. I love photo reading. It's basically being super focused when you go to read a book. So you take your book, you set your intention for what you want to do, and you focus, focus, focus. You're not doing anything else.
Mm,
You once you've set your focus and your intention, then you preview it by paging through. Then you do what's called photo reading, a soft focus, and then you post view it. And then you set it aside for 20 minutes, 24 hours, a couple days. You
mm,
come back and activate it, where you go through the book again and find the places in the book that really speak to you about what you really wanted to learn. So you're minimally going through the book at least 4 times
mm,
and picking up things from not just your conscious mind, but your other than conscious mind, your wise woman self.
mm.
And I love, love, love this technique. This is the third time I'll be taking the course. And so my commitment has been to photo read something every day, and I'm having a great time at it.
Mm. Can I ask you, what's been your biggest takeaway since you started it?
My biggest takeaway is that I'm reading an old book. It's 25 years old, written by Michael Gelb, called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay.
And one of the principles about how to think like Leonardo da Vinci is to ask lots of questions.
Mm,
And so when I was pondering one of my dilemmas about book marketing, I just was asking lots of different questions, not just why is this hard, but how could it be different? Could I do it? Could I come at it from a different angle? Is there a way to back into this? Is there somebody else I should talk to? Just ask, not looking for the answer, but just asking the questions, because
mm,
that illuminates how you begin to frame the final picture for yourself. So asking
Mm.
questions has been really fun.
yes.
Oh, I love that, Genevieve. Now, is your friend Millicent St. Clair?
She is.
All right, I
Mm,
got the link, so don't worry about sending that to us. I'll put it in our show notes. They're coming to Atlanta, Georgia, March 22nd through 24th,
mm.
July 12th through 14th, and
Yes.
November 15th through 17th. So thank you for giving us that resource.
I
Absolutely.
it has just been a boon in my life in a very big way.
Mm.
Very cool. When are you coming to Atlanta?
March 22nd through the 24th.
We
Oh,
should connect and have lunch because we're in Atlanta. That
Both
would
of
be
you.
delightful. Yes,
yes.
yes.
Oh my gosh.
We are Atlanta based. That would be delightful, Genevieve.
Yes, it
Let's see
would.
if we can make that happen.
Okay. Okay. We'll look at that offline.
Right?
But
I
yeah.
Yeah.
love it. Absolutely. So I'm thinking my hashtag is coming out of
Mhm.
what you just said because I think my intellectual wellness is going to be hashtag ask more questions.
I
That's
I love that.
right. I was because I was thinking even as we wrapped up, oh, I have more questions.
Right.
Shannon, what you got?
And I've been saying it throughout the show, right? I think it's financial forgiveness.
Ah,
Because I've
Mm,
helped a lot of people. I'm like, "Ooh, I could use that 500. I could use that 10,000. I could
mm,
use these
mm, mm,
different
mm,
things." And just the 3 different ways you were talking about forgiving, forgive it. The money's on the way, you know? So,
mhm,
hashtag financial forgiveness.
ah,
mm.
I love it.
What a
Thank you so much.
delightful conversation, y'all.
Mm.
This has been
Oh,
really good. Genevieve, oh, were you going to ask?
I think I might have been about to ask what you were gonna ask.
Go
Can you
ahead.
tell our listeners how to best find you if they wanna get connected to you and your work?
So I am available through GenevieveCmitchell.com, which is my website. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Facebook. And my email is gcm at GenevieveCmitchell.com. And
Mm,
I would love to have more conversations with anyone who wants to have this conversation because I think it's an important conversation about becoming conscious about who we are as economic people, but also as spiritual people.
I
Definitely.
love that. And
Def
Genevieve, you were telling us that if our listeners sign up for your newsletter, you have a 4-page heart centered money affirmations for them,
Yes.
which they can find on your website, which is
Yes.
lovely. And StreamYard was having trouble today. Streaming to LinkedIn. So we will make sure we get this episode posted on LinkedIn so
Wonderful.
folks can find you there too. We got that notice when we came on and
Mhm.
just, yep, tech
Going with the flow.
happens. It's
Yeah.
been happening lately.
Yeah, it
So
has.
that's another reason for what you talk about is investing locally, right?
Okay.
Because if you know your people, if you know your things, then when the things like the AT&T outage or
Mhm.
not being able to stream here or there happen, you are in your community, which is
Well,
powerful.
right. I think being connected locally, I'm going to a neighborhood association meeting later this evening because that matters to me. What
Right?
happens in my community matters to me.
Mm,
Yes. Thank you so much for
thank you
everything you
so
do.
much for your work in the world, Genevieve. Thank you for being connected to Women Connected in Wisdom. And we're just grateful to know you.
Mhm.
And
And
I am grateful for this opportunity to have this
mm,
conversation with two women who are on the cutting edge of keeping people well, which is what we
right,
Mm.
all need to do.
right.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you for your
Absolutely.
work and
Thank you.
thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Grateful to know you.
Talk to you soon.
Woo,
Mm.
such good stuff.
Another
Right?
lunch date. Yes.
Right? We love it when our guests and authors come into town and we get to
Yes.
meet them in person. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just have so many I haven't had a chance to read the entire book yet. I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to reading her entire book, and I was hoping to get it done before she came on, but I have not. So I'm going to have to do uh the photo memory or well, how did
What
you what was
wait, I
that
wrote it
said?
down. Where is it? Where are my
Okay, hang
notes?
on. Here we
Photo
go.
reading.
Photo reading in order to
Yes.
read all of our authors and guest books,
Mhm.
right?
'Cause I could really have a library of all of their books. I'm like, "Yep, I wanna read
I love
this
it.
one, Shift Calling, all these things. We need the
Right?
books."
So much. All right,
And
my friend, anything we need to shout out to our listeners before we close episode
so
149?
A few shout out. Well, I would
Mhm,
say one shout out, but before I do the shout out, I do want to mention something that came up, and it's the forgiveness overall, right? Because I think
mhm,
that'll help us with a lot of anger, a lot of the weight we've been carrying.
mhm,
For me, it's not just financial forgiveness. I said, well, what about some occupational forgiveness? What about
mhm.
some, like these stories that we tell ourselves about all the places we've worked? And I've realized going into this new position as a kitchen manager again that I could probably forgive some old stories and let it go a little bit
Mhm,
more. Maybe I haven't let it
mhm.
go all the way. So, wanted to share that. And for the shout outs, if you love the resources and then the stories that we share, we've been talking about the conference, but now we're getting ready for volume 3. So if you
Mhm.
want to be part of Connected in Wisdom Press, part of the Women Connected in Wisdom stories, or know somebody who would be a good fit, let us know. Give us a shout out, DM us, email us. Let's get connected and get ready for this next cohort.
I'll put the Google form in our show notes so
Oh,
they can find it there
we
too.
can
And you
do that.
can also find a show. We're hanging out over at LinkedIn at Women Connected in Wisdom group. You can join us over there for some intentional conversations that go past the podcast and
Mm,
meet some of our guests over there and say hello and get connected because, we truly believe that we don't have to do this by ourselves, that
mm-mm.
we have the resources, we have folks, and if we don't, somebody we know does.
Yeah. And I mean, what came up for me when you said that is just like Genevieve's works talks about, it's we're never by ourselves. So even if you're
Right.
doing it by yourself, it's just like the money, right? We have money, no matter how much or little we feel like it is, you looking at it and being intentional about it is what makes the difference. So you're not alone. If you want to intentionally be in community, we're actually just tailored out the different days. So we're about to start bringing a different level of connection to the community, and we look forward to seeing you there.
I have one last thing before we go.
Let's do it.
If you missed the conference and you're
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, Christine and Shannon, I can't believe I missed that. I
They
was
missed it.
doing da 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 da.
Yeah, they were.
You do have the opportunity to get the recordings. We will put that in our show notes. You can
Yeah.
find that on womenconnectedinwisdom.com, or you can go to Humanitix and look up Women Connected in Wisdom Summit recordings, and you have the opportunity to purchase those.
Yeah.
So I think we covered everything
Yeah, we
for
did it.
episode 149.
Woo woo. 149. We will be live at 5 next week for episode 150. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll talk to you soon.